They thought sanctions would cripple him, the African leader who refused to back down. Imagine you're the youngest leader in Africa. The world's superpowers hit you with crippling sanctions, fully expecting you to kneel. They think they have you backed into a corner. But what if, instead of crumbling, you did the unthinkable? This is the story of Ibrahim Traoré, the man who looked the West in the eye and said, "No more." He kicked out their armies, is uniting his people, and is trying to forge a new path for his nation, one free from foreign control. How is he doing it? And what does his defiance mean for the future of Africa? To understand this fiery captain, you first have to understand the world that made him. For decades, Burkina Faso, like much of the Sahel region, was stuck in a trap of dependency. Its reality was shaped by the long shadow of colonialism, a tangled web of economic and military deals that many felt weren't helping the people. The old colonial power, France, kept a large military footprint, with hundreds of special forces on the ground, supposedly to fight the terrorism that has torn the region apart since 2015. But for many in Burkina Faso, this didn't feel like protection. It felt like more of the same painful history. A baby born in Burkina Faso was 16 times more likely to die in their first year than a baby born in France. That one brutal statistic tells you everything you need to know about the legacy of colonial theft and the economic systems that followed. The nation's incredible mineral wealth, especially its gold, making up over 70% of exports, was mostly in the hands of foreign companies. Billions of dollars in resources left the country, while its people saw almost none of the benefits, trapped in what Traoré himself would later call a form of modern slavery. The security problem was just as bad. Even with French and other international troops there, the crisis only got worse. Jihadist groups tied to Al-Qaeda and ISIS expanded their reach, eventually controlling around 40% of the country. This sparked a massive humanitarian crisis, forcing over 2 million people from their homes and shutting down thousands of schools and clinics. To the people on the ground, it didn't look like the foreign troops were winning the war. It looked like they were just managing chaos. A deep frustration boiled over into powerful rage against foreign meddling, against economic exploitation, and against a government that couldn't seem to protect its own. That rage was simmering, just waiting for a spark. And that spark turned out to be a 34-year-old army captain. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré took power in a coup in September 2022, the international community reacted exactly as you'd expect. The West, with France and the EU in the lead, condemned the takeover. They immediately cut diplomatic ties and threatened to stop all aid. They saw him as just another military officer in a region full of them, a junta leader who'd ruined a fragile democracy. Nobody trusted his motives or believed he could govern one of the most unstable countries on earth. Inside Burkina Faso, the feeling was a mix of hope and deep uncertainty. The country was in a state of emergency, dealing with a security crisis, a healthcare crisis, and an infrastructure crisis. Traoré was the nation's second coup leader in just 8 months, and you could feel the instability in the air. Could this young, unknown captain actually do what so many others couldn't? Or was he just another strongman who would repeat the same old mistakes? The regional group, ECOWAS, had already sanctioned neighboring Mali and Niger for similar takeovers and was getting ready to do the same to Burkina Faso. The playbook was simple. Apply so much diplomatic and economic pressure that the new leader has no choice but to give in and go back to the old way of doing things. They expected him to bend, to negotiate a quick return to a civilian government that would keep everything the same. The pressure was immense. The path of defiance looked like political suicide. To the outside world, it wasn't a question of if he would back down, but when. They completely misjudged the man, and they misjudged the moment. They didn't get that for Traoré and his people. The only call they were refusing was the call to keep kneeling. Facing down the West and the threat of sanctions, Ibrahim Traoré didn't flinch. Instead of trying to get their approval, he turned his back on them. This was the moment everything changed, the moment he stepped into his role as a defiant, Pan-African leader. His mentor wasn't one person, but an idea. The revolutionary spirit of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's legendary leader from the 1980s, who also fought for self-sufficiency and stood against imperialism. Traoré brought back Sankara's memory, framing his own movement as a second chance at that unfinished revolution. His first move was his most dramatic. He cut the deep military ties with France. In early 2023, his government ripped up the agreement that let French forces operate in the country and gave all 400 Special Forces soldiers 1 month to get out. This was a political earthquake. For years, the French military was seen as a permanent part of the Sahel. Traoré got rid of it in a few weeks. He then kicked out French diplomats he accused of stirring up trouble and suspended French-funded news channels like RFI and France 24, which he said were brainwashing Africans. With the bridges to the west burning, Traoré pivoted. He looked for new allies who offered partnership without the baggage of colonial history and moral lectures. He went hard after a new relationship with Russia, looking to build cooperation exponentially. This wasn't just talk. It was backed by real action. Military support to fight the insurgency, with Russia promising to help crush radical groups, economic ties, with trade growing, and humanitarian aid, including shipments of tens of thousands of tons of free grain. Most importantly, he built a powerful new regional alliance. Along with the military governments in Mali and Niger, who were also getting hit with Western sanctions, he formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. It started in September 2023 as a mutual defense pact, a clear message to ECOWAS and the West that an attack on one is an attack on all. It has since grown into a plan for a full-blown confederation. The three nations have officially left ECOWAS and are talking about deeper political and economic ties, even floating the idea of a common currency. This alliance became his shield and his new platform, a coalition of the sanctioned, ready to build a future on their own terms. After burning his old bridges, Captain Traoré started the massive job of building a new Burkina Faso from the ground up. He was moving from just defiance to actually rebuilding. His vision was clear and incredibly bold: achieve real economic freedom. He declared that Burkina Faso would no longer be a victim of the global economy, but the star player in its own story. The heart of his strategy was taking back control of the nation's resources. He made it his mission to make sure the country's wealth finally helped its people. His government took aim at the gold mining industry, long dominated by foreign companies from Canada, Australia, and the UK. We can no longer allow our wealth to be extracted and exploited by outsiders while our people struggle, Traoré said, speaking a truth felt all across the continent. To make it official, his government changed the mining laws, raising the state's automatic, free share in mining projects from 10% to 15%. This meant the government got a bigger slice of the pie without spending a dime. He then stopped the export of raw gold and opened the country's first national gold refinery, a plant built to process 150 tons a year, keeping more of the money inside Burkina Faso. But his economic revolution didn't stop with gold. In a move that stunned international observers, Traoré's government announced it had a plan to clear the country's entire external debt. This act of financial liberation was sold as taking back the nation's independence from creditors and the tough conditions that come with loans from institutions like the IMF, which he has rejected. The money saved, along with the new revenue from the mines, was promised to the people. The government launched a huge agricultural initiative, aiming for food self-sufficiency. Profits were to be funneled into building schools, modernizing hospitals, and developing solar power. He even announced plans for a welfare system to give low-income citizens free housing and farms. This wasn't just policy, it was a complete rethinking of what a government is for, from managing foreign interests to building a self-reliant nation. You can't forge a new path without a fight, and Traoré's revolution has faced immense pressure. The enemies are clear and powerful. The West, especially France and the United States, watch his rise with anger. They labeled him an illegitimate junta leader. In April 2025, a top U.S. general accused him of misusing the country's gold reserves, a charge his government fired back at, calling it a smear campaign. Soon after, the U.S. banned its citizens from traveling to Burkina Faso, a move many saw as a warm-up for a bigger intervention, similar to what happened in Libya. His government also says it has stopped several coup attempts, accusing foreign powers and neighboring Ivory Coast of trying to sow total chaos and put the nation back under external supervision. The regional body ECOWAS, heavily influenced by its Western partners, took a hard line at first, threatening sanctions and even military action, especially after the coup in Niger. Traoré and his AES allies mocked these threats, calling ECOWAS a parade army and daring them to try. He blasted the sanctions as a crime, blaming the bloc for deaths caused by the economic blockade. But for every enemy, there was a powerful ally. The most important one was his own people. Traoré worked to build an image as a humble, accessible leader, often seen playing soccer with locals or speaking plainly about the country's problems. This connected with a population, especially the youth, who were sick of out-of-touch elites. His anti-colonial speeches and Pan-African vision ignited a massive following, both at home and across Africa, with supporters seeing him as the face of a new, assertive continent. His strongest allies abroad were his partners in the alliance of Sahel states, Mali and Niger. Together, they created a united front, a bloc of resistance that gave them all strength. Their exit from ECOWAS was a declaration of independence from the old regional order. And then there was Russia, a strategic partner giving military, economic, and diplomatic cover, a powerful shield against Western pressure. The struggle has been a high-stakes game of geopolitical chess, but Traoré has weathered the storm by turning his enemies' pressure into a rallying cry for his allies. The defiance of Ibrahim Traoré and the radical path he's on have completely changed the reality in Burkina Faso. The road back to stability is long and dangerous, but it's a road being built by the Burkinabe themselves. The results so far are a mix of real progress and huge, ongoing challenges. On the economic front, you can see the changes. Reforming the mining sector has started to redirect the nation's mineral wealth back home. The government's aggressive focus on agriculture and cotton processing has instilled a new sense of pride and possibility, a belief that self-reliance isn't just a slogan, but something they can actually achieve. But the security situation is still the biggest and hardest challenge. Even with new allies and a massive army of citizen militias, the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, VDP, the fight against jihadist groups is brutal and nowhere near over. Groups like J-Niam, an al-Qaeda affiliate, are still launching huge attacks, and a large part of the country, maybe as much as a third, is still not under firm government control. Critics say Traoré's security-first approach has made things worse in some areas, and that his government has crushed dissent by detaining journalists and activists. The humanitarian crisis isn't over, with millions still unable to go home. Still, a new reality is forming. It's a Burkina Faso that is, without a doubt, more sovereign. It sets its own foreign policy, it's taking control of its own resources, and it's charting its own course, for better or for worse. Popular support for Traoré is still high, fueled by the feeling that, even with all the hardship, he's fighting for them. The new reality is one of struggle, sacrifice, and uncertainty, but it's also one of new dignity and self-determination. The country is no longer a side character in a story written by others. It is now the author of its own destiny. What's happening in Burkina Faso under Captain Ibrahim Traoré is more than a power shift. It's a symbol of a possible rebirth for a continent held down for too long. He represents a new kind of African leader, unapologetically Pan-African, determined to be sovereign, and unwilling to accept the old colonial games. His actions, kicking out foreign troops, taking back key resources, and building new alliances based on respect instead of dependency, have sent shockwaves through the halls of power in Paris and Washington. They thought sanctions would cripple him. They thought that by cutting off aid and isolating his country, they could bring him to his knees. They were wrong. The pressure didn't break him. It made him stronger. It fired up his people and solidified his alliances. He showed that an African nation, even one of the poorest on earth, can stand up to global superpowers and not just survive, but earn a new kind of respect. Even the European Union, which first condemned him, has had to re-engage diplomatically, a sign that the old power dynamics are being challenged. Of course, the story is far from over. The challenges Burkina Faso faces are enormous. The war for security is brutal, and the road to prosperity is steep. There are real concerns about his government cracking down on dissent and whether a military-led government can last. But Traoré has lit a fire, a beacon of hope and a new confidence in the idea of a truly sovereign and united Africa. His defiance has become a rallying cry for millions of young people across the continent who are tired of watching their resources get shipped overseas while their people struggle. Ibrahim Traoré's legacy will be decided by whether he can turn his powerful vision into real peace and prosperity for his people. But one thing is for sure, he is a key player in the dawn of a new era for Africa, an era where the continent is done asking for a seat at the table. It's building its own. The world is changing and Africa is at the center of it. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré are rewriting the rules. What do you think about this new path for Africa? Is this the start of a real awakening for the continent? Or are the challenges just too big to overcome? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in these stories of African empowerment and want to see more, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to see it.